Okay, everything is nice and dry now. I have added a few details off camera because inspiration strikes us and sometimes we just go with the flow and we don't always put on that camera. So what I did was I added some tea bags here to kind of frame up that, which I think really makes the focal point pop. Over here I added a cute little angel stamp. I added some words here with love from above. I added a texture, some cheesecloth right here that I had tea dyed. And I added just for today, do not worry, because that's a very important saying from my Reiki practice. And I think we all need to hear that on a daily basis. So at this point, everything is so nice and dry. And I'm going to do a little bit of journal writing with my white Posca pen and just a micro pen, a number 10 nib. So I'm just going to pick a couple of spots to just journal a few things that come through. And the thing about this, it's not really for anybody else, it's for you. So I never really care if any of the words can be seen. I do want it to write. I'm going to just blur this a little because it doesn't need to be fully seen. All right, so the next step we're going to do is we're going to add some more white, I think, and some dark lines. I'm going to use my Stabilo pencil to add a horizon line and blacken that in a little bit more. So I'm just going right along here. And I'm taking an agua pen and making that bold and stand out. I like how it stains the cheesecloth. I think that's a very cool look. Gonna do a little framing. Now we're going to take a little bit of acrylic white, titanium white, and add that up here. And then I'll add some dark down here. Oopie. I'll come back in and get that again. Actually, maybe I'll add some gesso. Let me grab the gesso. Gesso's a little more opaque than the titanium white. So let's add some gesso. Let's add some Payne's Gray down here, but we're going to water it down a little bit. So I'm just going to give a little bit. I'm just making a wash with it. Let's see. Perfect. Yeah, that'll do it. We just want to put it here and there, you know, just to tint it a little bit down here. All right, let's let this dry and we'll come back and take a final look at it. Okay, here we are. Everything is nice and dry. I really like the division with this being grounded and then the butterflies lifting up into lightness. I think that worked out the way I had planned. It's lacking a little bit of texture for me. However, I like the white. I like the muted. I like how things just sort of peek out through it. But I'm going to add some gesso circles, some bubbles. So all I'm doing is putting the gesso in like this and taking my little Dixie cup that I use. It's got some weird stuff on it. And then I just get the rim coated, and then we'll put a few circles here and there. And that just helps to kind of spark it up a little bit. Even when they go down into the... Let's try the other side too. Get a smaller circle. Makes it a little thicker though. So let's see. Yeah, even like that. Okay. So I think that's enough. I like how it just gives a little bit of a lift up. I am going to mute those down a little bit because they don't need to be so vibrant. So to do that, I just put a paper towel on top of them and dab them. Takes away the excess paint also. Okay. This one's a little messy Marvin. Let's just clean it up a tiny bit. Okay, I like that a lot. This one I'm gonna really take back almost to where it's invisible. Same thing with this one. Okay, let's add a little bit of, let me get a brush, a small brush. Up in this corner, I'm going to just add a little bit of ink. So I'm just going to start off by getting it a little wet where I want to put the ink. It's not a real dark ink that I'm adding. It's just a, it's called gunmetal. So it's just a little tinge of darker color that's not as quite as dark as the Payne's gray. But it's just going to give this look up here, this area up here, just a little bit of a darker look. So what it'll do is it'll help to balance out that the base is so dark, and then this becomes a little darker, but not in a black way, more in a lighter way, kind of a pinkish way even. I think it blends nicely with that. All right, I'm going to add some right here too. Where'd that go? Just to give it a little offset of color. Sometimes it's these little dabs that make a big difference in your work. The little finishing touches that we do can really make a big difference. Nobody else sees them, you'll see them. But they become special, you know what I mean? All right, one of the last things I'm going to do also is I am going to bring in a few splatters. In fact, let's do it with this. So I'm just hitting the bottle. Here and there. And then I'll dab it back in just a minute. I'll just take those back. See? Just gives a little bit of interest. And I want to bring in my Stabilo one more time right here. Just smear that. That ink is still a little wet, so I can smear the Stabilo easily in that. See, the good thing with Stabilo is if you don't want it as dark as it first comes out, you just take a aqua pin and then just touch it back. But that just helps to make those words pop. See how it makes those words pop? Let's give a little right here. There. I think that's nice. I'm going to just put that back just a tiny bit. See how that colored it? And I think I'm going to do the same with this. It pops out a little too much. So I'm just going to add some fresh Stabilo. And then I'm just going to go over it a little. And then it just helps to make it look not so bold and in your face, but it's still readable. Know what I mean? Well, I think at this point, this is done. And the last touch that I'm going to do, which I often do, is I'm going to bring in my Distress ink and go around the edges. This might still be a little wet, so let's get it dry real quick. All right, so I'm using Tim Holtz's Distress ink. I love the walnut stain. I love it as a finishing touch because I do think it just takes a page and it finishes it off by adding it and going over it with your fingers and sort of bringing the color into the page like that. Oops, I hit the camera with my glasses. Well, what do you think? So I hope that you have enjoyed this class and that if you're creating your own, whether it be like mine or your own design, that it gives you a sense for also layout, to think in terms sometimes of horizon line and a little bit of grid work, and also finishing touches and going with your intuition, not being afraid to cover things up with white gesso or Payne's gray or white acrylic paint, and knowing that every layer may have spoken to you. It may have been very important and meaningful to you, and that we don't always get to have everything revealed because it is a little bit of a spiritual practice. It's a soulful process that you go through when you create an art journal page or take it to canvas. Each layer is a revelation or a part of you that you're bringing from within outward, and sometimes it's just for you. It's just part of your process. So you have to be willing to step back from your artwork, let things dry, maybe open up to new direction. Don't be afraid to ask what the next step is, and it is okay. Remember, this is your playground also, too. And don't be afraid to experiment. Maybe this time you'll look at it and you'll go, I really didn't like that. I didn't like how that turned out. So next time you know not what to do. When you go to a canvas, you know what not to do. But for all intent and purposes, when you look at something, a creation like this that you've done in your art journal, and you say to yourself, oh my gosh, I love this, then imagine taking it to a canvas. So we're going to talk about that in a future lesson, taking it from the page to a canvas, and how to do that, because there is a little bit of a process to it that will make sure that and ensure that what you're doing here, you actually are able to recreate, or not recreate even, but to create anew on a canvas. All right, so thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, have fun creating, and may it give you great joy. Take care. Bye-bye.